Good morning, everyone, and welcome to County Executive Pittman's virtual press conference. This morning, the County Executive will share updates on the reopening of county buildings, the launch of a veteran service phone line, and other announcements. We'll be taking questions after, as usual. As a reminder, please put your name and media affiliation in the chat, and I'll call on folks for questions in that order. And if you could keep your mic and camera off unless you're speaking. Thank you. And with that, County Executive Pittman.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks to everybody for joining us. We had a good Memorial Day weekend. Enjoying the weather yesterday, of course, not so much the previous days, but COVID case rates continue to drop. We're down around 3 cases per 100,000, although Dr. K will remind you that that number is probably not as accurate since the testing numbers are much lower. Not as accurate as it used to be, but it's certainly moving in the right direction. The fact that we only have about 20 hospitalized COVID patients in the county right now is also big progress, and that we're pretty close to 70% of our adults vaccinated, at least with 1 dose. And then when you compare us to other counties, we're in good shape too. Our case rates are about 12th out of 24. Our infection rate, which shows whether we're going up or down, is down at 17th out of 24. So our case rates are dropping faster than most counties, which is also good news. And I think you saw this weekend that businesses are back, restaurants are thriving and opening, and lots of activity. Folks are going on vacations and traveling, and hotels are open and doing business again, which is great. I think it's been the transition back to business has been challenging for some, particularly the service sector, employment, the lower wage jobs, folks who are still have kids in school and have to be home because school's not open 5 days. So they have to be home some of the time. Childcare centers not at full capacity yet. So we're in that transition period where some folks are getting back to work more slowly, and we hope that they will be back to work soon. But on that note, Arundel County has been working on doing that transition back to work and fully opening to the public in all of our buildings that had been open before. In a really deliberate way, we interviewed our department heads. We surveyed our county employees to ask them how they felt about telework and some of the changes that happened during COVID and which ones we might want to continue and learn from. So we are announcing to staff that as of July 5th, everybody will be back to work, but there's a new telework policy that's being reviewed right now through which employees can request of their supervisors to telework, and it will depend on the nature of their jobs, but there will be more telework going on in Anne Arundel County government than we've had ever in the past. And then by July 19th, after that brief transition period, all county government buildings will be fully open who were open before to the public. So those are the dates that we're working towards, and of course continuing to figure out which of the efficiencies from COVID still work. We'll be doing obviously more virtual meetings than we ever have in the past before COVID. And more electronic transactions. I think the public is getting used to doing things virtually that they weren't used to before. So it really does make government more efficient, but we have to be really deliberate and careful about how we make the transition back to take advantage of the new efficiencies. Memorial Day, we honored the fallen, those who sacrificed for our country in times of war. And today we're announcing a new program, a new veteran service phone line for veterans who are still with us and are in need. And I want to say that our Veterans Affairs Commission has been very, very active since I came into office. We revitalized it, reconstituted it, put a lot of new people on it. It's chaired by Colonel John Church. And what I've found from this group is that their focus is very much on service to veterans. And so they have been asking the county to figure out how to get departments to deliver for veterans in more efficient ways. So you may remember back in the fall, we announced veteran service coordination effort with our departments. So in all of the service departments, there's now a liaison who has been educated and is continuing to be educated about veterans programs and services, and a person that veterans can go to. What we're adding today is a new phone number that will be managed through our CECS office, Community Engagement Constituent Services. That will then, it'll be a portal to those services, to those department experts. And that number is 410-222-3500. So we're launching that today. And I have Pete Smith here to answer questions when we get to the end about that, how that's working. Pete is our Military and Veterans Affairs Liaison. And then just a few quick announcements. It's Gun Violence Awareness Month. Friday is Gun Violence Awareness Day, Wear Orange Day. And I think some of you know already that because we have said gun violence is a public health issue, that's what our Gun Violence Prevention Task Force told us. And there are 55 recommendations. Many of them were framed in a public health context. We have staffed that in the health department, and the gun violence intervention team, which is the interagency operation, has put together a series of online sessions for Thursday and Friday that I'm really looking forward to. I think you probably have gotten the information about those. You can get all that information at Gun Violence Intervention with a dash between each word at aacounty.org. And the opening session I will be at, we're very honored to have Georges Benjamin, the chairman of the American Public Health Association, joining us to talk about that perspective. It's an important movement towards treating gun violence as a public health issue. And we're on the cutting edge of that. And then it's also Pride Month, LGBTQ Pride Month, and there will be activities, and you'll see things on our social media pages about that coming up as we move into the month. Juneteenth, we have an announcement tomorrow at 4:00 at People's Park related to Juneteenth. As you know, there's celebrations that are going to be organized this year by a group in Annapolis, or really for the whole county, but based in Annapolis. And we have an important and historic announcement that we're going to be making tomorrow related to that. And then tonight, we have the Tuesday night with County Executive. We have our whole team, or at least our leadership from Department of Recreation and Parks, talking both short-term and long-term about programs this summer that families and kids can participate in, as well as the longer-term planning for Parks and Rec, the LPPRP, Land Preservation Parks and Recreation Plan. That is the public input, public engagement piece of that is underway. So we're going to talk about that process as well. So join us tonight at 6 for that. Over to you, Dr. Kalyanaraman.
Thank you, County Executive. I just want to highlight a few items on COVID. As the County Executive mentioned, we're doing much better. Our hospitalizations are down below 30, near 20. And that's really what we're going to be keyed in on as we get more and more people vaccinated. That's really going to be the measure of how well we're doing. That said, our case rate is also at 3, which is really, really just great news overall. We have 69% of all adults who've gotten at least 1 dose, and that works out to about 53% of the population. We're seeing increasing numbers of 12 to 17-year-olds getting their first shot, up to 35%, and that's great, since at least the 12 to 15-year-olds only had a few weeks to have done that. And that's a key part of our strategy. We are looking to partner with dollar stores, barbershops, beauty salons, other businesses to really put vaccinations where people are and where they are going to shop, going to get services, so that we can make it as easy as possible. And we're really excited about that. We're also having a Johnson & Johnson vaccination clinic on Thursday to see what kind of demand there is for that. We're partnering with doctors' offices, both pediatrics and primary care, to get vaccines into their offices, and also to help them with the processes We've talked about the challenges of managing this vaccine, the requirements for cold chain, so keeping it cold, and also trying not to waste vaccine. And so that's a little bit challenging for most practices where this isn't the normal way that vaccines are done. And so we're working with them to get those vaccines into their offices so that they can do it for their patients. That's all I wanted to add on COVID. And then just to echo the county executive on the gun violence intervention seminar this Thursday and Friday. And it's really going to be keyed in on how we can improve public health around this. In addition to Dr. Benjamin, we have a couple of speakers from Johns Hopkins to talk about extreme risk protection orders and lethality in suicide from guns. And then also a couple of community engagement sessions so we can understand what people are seeing and need in the community and figure out how our responses to that are responsive and incorporate community participation. So with that, I will turn it back over to you, Jeff, I think.
All right, and with that, we will open it up for questions. Again, if you could put your name and media affiliation in the chat, and I'll call on you in that order for questions. Daniel Old, Capital.
Hi, good morning. Thanks so much. I have a question about the county building reopening. I think last week on this call, County Executive, you mentioned that your office and that the county is kind of considering what to do about whether or not folks will have to prove that they've been vaccinated in order to enter county buildings without a mask. Are there any updates on that? I mean, how is the county going to try to assess whether or not someone's been vaccinated?
Well, I mean, what we did for employees was not to say that we're going to check everybody. It was that we can, because we have the authority to do so, and that the the CDC guideline we take seriously. And so however, if it's the public coming in, again, we're not going to stand there and check. I mean, throughout the pandemic, you've seen that our enforcement has been not very invasive. I mean, our police department's been careful not to engage in a heavy-handed way on enforcing mask mandates, and that's been the case in county buildings all along, where we have not enforced the mandate in a heavy-handed way. So we don't foresee ourselves doing that, but not made a decision on the public. We're certainly discouraging anybody from coming into a county building that is not vaccinated without a mask. But we still haven't made a decision when we open on the 19th for those additional activities, how we're going to handle that.
Okay, thank you.
Next up, Amy Simpson, Fox 45.
Thanks, Jeff. Good morning, Mr. County Executive. My first question is related to what Dr. Kay was saying about looking to partner with dollar stores, barbershops to get more shots to where people actually are. I wanted to get some maybe metrics and goals that you all have set about how many people, how much of the population you're hoping to reach with these methods, what kind of timeline you're on for these as well.
So we're looking to push when we talk about population immunity. We want to get to at least 80% of the population with one dose, and ideally 90%. That's obviously part of that is related to kids and approval, but the other part is making it easier for adults. And then apologize, I forgot the second part of your question.
What kind of timeline you're on for these efforts? Because we see it happening at the state level as well.
Yeah, so I mean, we're going to just continue to push. This is a big push over the summer that we're going to be working with businesses and a whole range of other actors to do this. We want to get positioned for cold and flu season so that everybody's got their COVID shot in their arms, and then we can turn our focus to flu shots.
Great, thank you. And then one more question too, with June being Gun Violence Awareness Month, Baltimore City just had a very violent Memorial Day weekend. Numbers right now about 10 people killed, more, injured. Thoughts, reaction to that, as it's a neighboring jurisdiction and you all, have your own ongoing efforts to combat gun violence.
Yeah, I'll start, but yeah, we are actually, I think this is the reason to have this type of approach, is to provide a different lens to look at gun violence. We've been in contact with folks in Baltimore City who are doing this work, and they too are keyed in on a public health approach. And whatever the scale is in Baltimore City versus in Arundel, it affects lives no matter. And that's what we're really trying to do, is save lives and protect people.
Our police department also is in close contact with the Baltimore City Police Department, and I've talked to Mayor Scott as well about the trafficking of guns up and down the 95 corridor. We're right there on that corridor, and so all the efforts to prevent the sale and illegal, trafficking of drugs, we're cooperating with them on.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Next up, Kate Amara from WBAL.
Hi, Danielle and Amy had great questions. I have a follow-up for each of them, if that's okay. First, Mr. County Executive, about all the buildings opening to the public July 19th. Can you give us examples of some of those buildings that your residents may, they may not realize, that one's been closed, or that one's been, and then in terms of, you said you hadn't made decisions about how you'll handle people who aren't vaccinated wearing masks inside, but I was wondering about all of the kind of current COVID health protocols we've seen. Are you also making decisions on whether there'll be temperature checks or signage suggesting it, like as at the State House right now? Is all of it under consideration?
I know we talked about temperature checks and have done them, but we're not planning to do temperature checks at all of our buildings at this point. The terms of signage, we have signage now, and there will continue to be signage. What was the first part? Sorry.
Because you said you're trying to decide how to handle non-vaccinated people, even though you're encouraging them to wear masks indoors. And for example, at the State House, there's a sign that says, it's highly recommended if you're not vaccinated, you wear a mask inside. They have that kind of signage. Are you considering that?
Well, we're considering going a little further than that. And that's what we haven't decided. And the further is to be specific and say that if you're not vaccinated, it's required that you wear a mask inside. And so, as some businesses have done, because that's what we're doing for our employees, taking it that one step further. Because I believe that people really need to have as many reasons as possible to get vaccinated. And if we have the CDC saying that people should not be in public indoor spaces unvaccinated, then it's really it's our obligation as local government, as well as businesses, to do what we need to do to enforce that and to protect our county buildings, our county employees, and the public from a false surge. So that's the open question. Do we require it, or do we just recommend it for the public?
I remember the part that I forgot that I asked you. Is it examples of county buildings that will be reopening on the 19th? Everyone.
Yeah. So, for instance, you can't go into the Arundel Center now to pay your taxes or your bills to the county. You have to leave them in a drop box outside. In the permit center, that's being done the same way. You drop off your applications rather than go in and deal face to face with the staff there. So those are the kinds of things where they come in off the street to deal face to face with county employees for services.
Thank you. And then my follow up to Amy's question to Dr. K. I just want to clarify. You said you hope to get 80% of the population vaccinated, maybe 90. Is that of the adult population or the entire population. And to some skeptics of the 70% benchmark, can you explain why that is an important goal and why that mark is important to reach and what it means in terms of progress and herd immunity? And why is 70% something you're aiming for?
Yeah, so the 80% is of eligible people. And obviously we can't vaccinate kids 11 and under. The reason these benchmarks are important is because we know at these higher levels of vaccination, not only are you protecting those people who are vaccinated, but you're also really protecting those who are not vaccinated as well, because you're able to cut down the rates of transmission. And that's why we want to get to those higher rates, that 80%. That's the population or herd immunity that we talk about.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we've got a question from Bethany Probst for WNAV News. How has the public's response to the vaccine changed? Is there as much hesitation?
What we're seeing is a couple of things. The reason that there are multiple reasons for why people haven't gotten their vaccine yet. There's a combination of people who have questions, still want to see what happens, people who are dead set against it, and also people who just haven't had the opportunity or will do it if it's very easy or convenient for them. So we're really looking at all of these different groups and trying to tailor our approaches to each of them. I mentioned our work with businesses. That's really to make it as easy and frictionless as possible. Kind of the, well, I'll get the shot if it's right here kind of approach. And that's going to be true, right? This is not just one reason why people don't get it. Everybody's got their own reason, and we've got to be very creative in dealing with all those reasons.
All right, question from Brooks DuBose at the Capitol, and a reminder, if you have questions, put them into the chat. I don't see anybody else at the moment, but last call, questions and media affiliation in the chat. Brooks, over to you.
Good morning. I apologize. I missed the beginning of the county executive's opening statement about the veterans phone line, but so I guess this question is for Pete Smith, but is this veterans phone line different from the current veterans crisis line, which I believe is the federal service through the Department of Veteran Affairs? And then secondly, what kinds of services will folks have access to when they call?
So yes, Brooks, this line is different from the federal side of the house. This is a county managed entity when it comes to the phone line itself. The primary purpose is to consolidate, the county has about 60,000 veterans roughly that live in Anne Arundel County. If you include the family, you're well into 18, 20% of the population that is either veterans or veteran related family members. So that's a significant part of sort of Anne Arundel County's DNA. And so having a resource that allows the county to consolidate how we interact with these individuals is just trying to make it much more beneficial to those that live in Anne Arundel counties that are veterans. Some of the services that will be available, we're not creating a new entity. We're just trying to make sure that we are able to address the needs of those that are veterans. And so the best way to do this is because currently at the moment, if a veteran calls in, they probably call into the constituent services or one of the other directorates within the Anne Arundel County. And we don't know that they're veterans. And so what we're trying to do is posture ourselves, the county, to be much more fluid when it comes to assisting these claims issues and routing them to the right people that can make their lives a little bit easier. And so for me, I think it's a good thing. The second piece of this is data collection, right? I'll often use the term, if you build it, they will come, right? A lot of the information that comes in from the commission, John Church and other members, they're always interested in knowing, well, how many veterans interact with Anne Arundel County? Well, right now, we couldn't tell you that specifically because when they call Rex and Parks, or if they call permitting office or whatever department, none of the individuals on those lines are asking people, are they veterans? And so we do know that if they call 3500, that they are a veteran. And so this will allow us to capture that sort of significant use of the county resources and understand what the veteran population is that's using it. And so that's why we're doing this, to make it easier for veterans to navigate the county related services that we offer to the citizens in general, but also to move the Veteran Service Coordination Center in a way that is much more productive in offering sort of wraparound services to these individuals that need help from us or the state or the federal level.
And just follow up on that. Will you have will the county do sort of an outreach effort to ensure that people are being directed towards this specific number so that they know that, I mean, of course, if they call, they can call the general county number, they can maybe be directed to this, but will there be sort of maybe a social media campaign or some other way to outreach people?
There is, and obviously this is part of that sort of unveiling. We obviously had Memorial Day yesterday. We probably had over a dozen people in Anne Arundel County that have sort of given their lives over the last 20 years to OIF and OEF, and I think we posted that yesterday as well. And so for us to make sure that we are catering to the services of these veterans, because remember, Fort Meade is a large, Fort Meade Naval Academy, Coast Guard Yard. We have a significant veteran population here, and I think the county executive is certainly making it known that it is important for his agenda to address the needs of those who have served our country. And so I'm just grateful to be able to help navigate that, and we will not just answer the question that they usually call in for, but I think sometimes veterans don't know what to ask for when they call into the county. And so educating our internal staff, which is what we've been doing over the last, since October of last year, we've had monthly training or bi-monthly training sessions on everything that's veterans related to some of the key staff within the county departments, so that we can direct them when they do call about a specific issue. We can actually help them with other issues as well that they may not be aware of. And so that's the intent behind this slide.
Thank you.
Kate Amara from WBAL.
Yes, I have a three-part vaccine clinic question, but they should be easy to answer. First, where's the J&J clinic on Thursday, I think you said? Second, have you already, or are you in the process of preparing to wind down your county-based COVID vaccination clinics, as we've seen in other jurisdictions? And Moderna applied for its EUA for 12 plus today. Will that help your effort or does it really not matter, since you still have the cold storage requirements for Moderna, and the supply has increased compared to when Pfizer got the EUA for 12 plus?
All right, so let's try to take them one at a time. So the J&J clinic that I was mentioning is going to be at our Bay Meadows site. That's going to be on the third on Thursday from 8 to 11, and then from 12 to 3. In terms of the Moderna approval, it absolutely helps to have the Moderna with the handling requirements. While the Pfizer handling requirements are getting easier, Moderna has been easier. And so just having more options is always helpful. What was the third question, Kate?
Have you begun to close or wind down any of your, or in the process of winding down any of your county vaccination clinics?
We are in that process. We are with the casino site. We've finished our first doses there, and we're looking at the timing for O'Malley and for the community college as well to wind down first doses there, at least for a 5-day-a-week operation. We are going to be going to a much more rotated and distributed kind of vaccination model.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, Chase Cook from the Capitol, and then we'll have Rick Hutzell, and that'll wrap us up. Chase.
Yes, hi. I just had a logistical question about the health department data. This Friday, I think the vaccine data wasn't updated. Maybe it was a holiday thing, or maybe I just didn't look at the right time and it was updated later. Well, how is the county going to continue updating its COVID data moving forward as the case numbers and things kind of wane?
I'll check on that, Chase, but it's probably just a Friday thing. We will continue to update them daily for now. And then we are talking about what that frequency is going to look like going forward, particularly as there's less and less change happening on a day-to-day basis.
One more quick follow-up that just came to me as you were answering that. I appreciate it. The change process and the waning testing came up briefly. I think somebody mentioned people are being tested less often. Is there going to be, I mean, that still seems like an important part of this whole thing is making sure the people who have COVID, we know where they are. Is the testing apparatus going to change for the county? Is there going to be a different focus, different outreach efforts, anything like that as you guys wind down?
Yeah, so the testing goal does change, particularly as people get vaccinated. The recommendation is not to do routine screening without symptoms, and so we're definitely going to be doing less of the testing, and it's going to be much more towards for people who are symptomatic. So there is testing capacity within primary care, urgent care, hospitals, and that's really where the focus of the testing is going to be, on individuals and symptoms as opposed to generalized population surveillance. For certain settings, it's still going to be appropriate, but that's going to be on more case-by-case basis.
Thank you, sir.
All right, last question, Rick Hutzell, Capital.
I guess this is for Pete, for the county executive. I'm not sure who. Has Shannon Kent's name been added to the 2 county memorials for soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen killed since the wars that started after 9/11?
So not that I'm aware of as far as the memorial, her name being added into that. I can check and then get back to you, Rick.
Yeah, and I guess if it hasn't, is there a plan? Obviously, she lived here during her last posting. I don't know if the family is still here.
Yeah, I think a lot of times when they actually, I don't know if was she born here, because that the military sometimes doesn't have the most updated way to sort of transcribe someone's place of birth, which is what they count as where they're from, Anne Arundel County, from where they live the majority of their lives. And so depending on what their record says and their DDT 14, her place of birth could have been some other location. And so that sometimes complicates where the data is actually, transcribing exactly where they live.
Okay, if you can just let me know. And I thought we had a complete list of who was on the, I guess it's the Grove at Fort Smallwood and the plaque at the Arundel Center. Maybe if you could provide a list of that, because we thought it matched up with the list that we've been running. You mentioned you posted your own. Just kind of want to make sure that we have the same list.
And don't forget that the list that I posted was just OEF and OIF. There have been about 3 other operations that the military has been engaged in. So this was just like we've done with Vietnam veterans when we put a focus on them. This was focused, at least that post was focused on OAF and OEF. And so if hers was one of the other operations, it would have been included in that post.
She was the sailor who was killed in Syria.
Correct.
All right, thanks everyone for the questions. We'll talk to you all soon. Have a good day.